In the last lecture, we discussed the concept of web application penetration testing flow. In the web application penetration testing, there is a systematic testing need to be performed. So first of all, we need to define the objective of the web application penetration testing, and towards this objective, the corresponding information need to be gathered. This information may be general information or maybe technical information, such as the information that you will gain using the footprinting process or the network scanning process. Then we need to check for the configuration management testing. That means, did the web server has been set up with the default configuration or not. Then once it is done, then we need to check for the authentication testing. That means, can we break up the passwords for the usernames that will add in, that are available. Once the authentication is successful, then a session will be maintained, and we need to test for the session management. That means, can we get the session ID? Can we get the session related information, especially the session tokens? And can we manipulate the sessions that is without logging, that is without uh, disturbing the ongoing communication? So these kind of things need to be tested in the web session management, that is session management. Next one is authorization testing. As we have seen that authorization requires authentication. Here we are supposed to check for the access control. Even though you are a valid user to enter into the system, but you may not be having the authorization to access various folders or browse files, etc. in the application. So this authorization testing need to be done. Usually the authorization testing will be in two dimensions. One is horizontal control and vertical control. Horizontal means you are going to access the resources of the same level, that is your peer level, and vertical means it is just like a privilege, escalating the privileges. That means from the normal user to the admin user level privileges you are supposed to obtain. That is called vertical level escalation. Next one is business logic testing. Here we are mainly focusing on the programming of the web application. In this, we are mainly focusing on what type of application packages, that is APIs they have used, and what is the version of the programming that they are using, and is there any flaws available in the particular APIs. These kind of things we are going to see. Especially, we are going to check for the buffer overflows or memory exploitation. This kind of things we'll check in the business logic. Next one is data validation testing. Whatever the data that you supply in these forms usually will be sent to the server, and whenever this particular data was sent to server, obviously at the server level the business logic has to sanitize this particular data. Sometimes the data validation may not be proper, and because of this data invalidation, that is improper validation, the special characters that are included in the URLs may be disturbing the servers, like by executing the SQL commands or by executing the operating system commands or LDAP commands. So these kind of commands may be executed, and the server may be compromised. So that is the reason this data validation testing need to be performed. Next one is web services testing. Usually, to communicate between the web applications, web services play a major role. The web services in general will be written using the XML and its XML parsing services, like WSDL, Web Services Description Languages. And for this communication, XML-based schemas and XML-based processing will be used, especially like a document object model and simple API for XML. These kind of things will be used for the web services. And many of the web applications in general will use the web services for communication between the web applications. So if they might have used these web services, then we need to check for the web services testing, and latest modern web applications are making use of the AJAX, which is asynchronous JavaScript and XML. And we need to perform the AJAX testing, in which we mainly focus on injecting of the or manipulating the XML and JavaScript related codes. And usually this will be done by the software testers at the development level itself. But if something was missed or if some parameter controls are missed, then obviously in the security testing we need to check uh, all those validations. So this is as far as the web application penetration testing is concerned. Next, we'll move on to the countermeasures for the web application penetration testing or web application attacks. So we have seen step by step, that is input validation and the the testing related to various stages, such as the denial of service, or such as the uh, the SQL injection, command injection, LDAP injection, this kind of things. So we need to provide countermeasures for these things. So, as part of this, first and foremost thing is defending against farm input, because many applications, especially the applications, were designed to receive inputs from the users. So, this must be safeguarded. That is, what are the validation, what are the input given by the user must be checked thoroughly to to not to avoid the damage to the server and application. So first thing to be done here is to use the encoding schemes to defending against the form input. Here encoding scheme in the sense, don't send the text in a plain fashion. In a plain form means is nothing but you are supposed to safely handle the unusual characters, and if any binary data is available, such kind of such data need to be handled carefully. So encoding in the sense, instead of sending a plain text, we used to use some encoding characters. Like for example, uh, uh, this year is 2020. Okay, this is a character. This is a word, and there is a space. Year is a word, and there will be a space. Is a word. There will be a space as 2020. So this is a number. And here in 2020, 2 is a number and 0 may be considered as a binary number. So like that, it is a mixture of characters and numbers. And also you might have observed, if you write this entire text, or if you write this entire statement, in this white spaces are also there. White space means there is a space between the words. That means we must encode these things like spaces. We need to encode any any tab spaces or whatever it may be, uh, so that you will not give any scope to inject something in between that. So in this process, there are two types of encoding. One is URL encoding, and second one is HTML encoding. Especially the URL encoding is the process of converting the plain URLs into some format, especially the ASCII format. So ASCII format means this is general. This is the format can be understandable by any browser. So that that can be easily transported over the HTTP protocol. Some examples are like this in URL encoding. For example, if you want to mention is equal to, that means some like a user is equal to something and password is equal to something. Wherever is equal to is there, it may be encoded with percentile 3D. And if new line is there, that may be encoded with percentile 0A. And if some space is there, that may be encoded with percentile 20. So you might have observed or not, whenever you use any web application over the internet, whenever you fill the form and press submit or login, On the URL section, you will find so many junk characters like percentile %a, percentile %3d, like that, which is called URL encoding. Where they have converted the white spaces, tab spaces, new lines is equal to this kind of things were converted into some encoding format. So thereby it will be difficult for the hacker or the eavesdropper to identify what the format is. And when there is no space in between the plain text, obviously SQL command injection is also not possible. This is what the basic idea behind that. Next, we'll see the HTML encoding. In the HTML encoding, especially the usual characters need to be changed, like ampersand symbol. The ampersand symbol may be defined like ampersand AMP, and this less than symbol may be replaced with ampersand LT colon, and greater than symbol may be replaced with ampersand GT, that is greater than colon. So this is the way, instead of sending simple symbols like ampersand less than, greater than, because the same symbols may also be used in the SQL commands like select star from EMP where salary greater than or less than, like that. So they may use any query like this. So they may use any characters like this whenever this SQL based encoding was done. So because SQL commands especially uses this format, so so we may focus on this these symbols so that we will not give a scope to the attacker to inject commands. Next is other encoding schemes are like this. Unicode encoding scheme will be there, and base 64 encoding schemes are there. Hex encoding schemes are there. Basically, whatever the websites you look at, mostly are in the was written in English. So English language will support with the ASCII coding. But if multi-language websites are available, like the languages in Hindi or any other Indian languages other than English, then obviously you need to have some other encoding schemes, such as Unicode encoding. Like this Unicode encoding means Unicode will support almost all world languages formats, character sets. So in this, you may be having 16-bit Unicode encoding schemes. So in which to represent this Unicode encoding scheme, we may prefix that particular character code with percentile U. Okay, and if you want to encode it with the UTF-8, that is this is a 8-bit encoding scheme. So it is a variable length encoding standard which uses each byte expressed in hexadecimal, and it will be prefixed with percentile C. Okay. Next one is base 64 encoding. Usually this base 64 encoding will be used in encoding the emails. Okay. So this is also like a printable ASCII characters encoding will be done. And next one is hex encoding. And hex encoding means whatever the normal encoding is there, that is in the plain form like 1, 2, 3, 4, or A, B, C, D, etc. That will be converted into the hexadecimal form. So this is what we call hexadecimal encoding. So the ultimate aim of this encoding is to not to allow a eavesdropper or hacker to inject commands into the input stream. This is what the basic idea of the form encoding. Next encoding scheme that need to be adopted is next countermeasure that need to be adopted is defending against the SQL injection. So because from web application it is possible for us to inject the SQL command. So in order to do that, first of all, because SQL commands are sometimes maybe in a plain form or maybe in nested form. Whenever it is in nested form, obviously the length of the query is too long. When the length of the query is too long, obviously it must be identified. In general, from form you cannot in general you cannot send in a word what called text box or a form field or something of 500 or 600 character length. So usually nested queries and complex queries will be having at least of 100 to 200 characters. So that is the reason. First thing is limit the length of the user input. So always you fix the size of the user input. So if you might have mentioned that okay, address text field, then you must limit the characters to 150 characters or 100 characters or something. So user has to enter the input in that particular length only. If this length is not fixed, then there is a possibility of injecting the SQL commands. Next one is instead of database error messages, you are recommended to use the custom error messages. That means you provide your own error messages. So don't use the database error messages, or don't allow the web application error messages to print on the screen. That is especially whenever you click the PHP related web applications. So many error messages you will be observing in the PHP based developed web applications. So they simply allowing to show the error messages. With that error message also you will come to know the loopholes in the web application and server. So that is the reason you are recommended to use the custom error messages. Next is monitor the database traffic using the intrusion detection system or web application firewall. WAF means web application firewall. And to not to execute the operating system commands, so disable the command like xp underscore cmd shell. So this is a command especially used in the SQL queries to execute the operating system commands. Next is isolate. That means differentiate. That is, don't combine the database server and web server together. So web server need to separately request the database server, and database server need to give the reply to the web server. Like that, you make an architecture. Next one is always use encoding and also use the post method, so that the URL will not be understood by anyone. If you use get method, obviously URL can be understood because whatever the content or whatever the input you provide via form, that can be shown on the URL bar. And always you use the low privileged accounts for database connection. Next one is run the database service account with minimal rights. That means always you provide maximum of read access or maybe view access or this kind of thing. Minimal rights must be there. Whenever any committing or rollback, this kind of complex, especially the transaction control language related commands, if you are trying to execute, then obviously admin permissions are required. Next is to move the stored procedures. Basically, stored procedures will be executed whenever any trigger was fired. That means whenever you are entering a salary of manager or salary of the employee, if the salary employee of the employee you are entering is greater than the salary of the manager, then some trigger has to be raised, and the trigger may in turn may call the stored procedures. So if such kind of things are there, re, transfer this particular stored procedures onto an isolate server, and there you may execute that. Next is use type safe variable functions. So checking of the variable names like is numeric or is character or some like type safe functions you are recommended to use. Next one is validate and sanitize the input, especially user input. Sanitizing in the sense, is there any junk characters are available or is there any unknown characters are available? This kind of things you are supposed to check. This is with respect to the SQL injection defending for the especially for the web applications. Next, we will move on to the defending against a command injection. SQL injection is mainly focusing on the databases. Command injection will focus on disturbing the operating system commands. It is executing the operating system services. So here also uh, check for the input, escape the dangerous characters if anything is there. Like if you want to perform the encoding or if you want to perform exclusive or operation, then you may use cap symbol in the Windows operating system. So you may use cap symbol and uh, and you may run the exclusive or operation with any file name. Then automatically that content in the file will be encrypted with the or converted into exclusive or operation with whatever the character you supply. So that means, for example, I want to encrypt the content of a file, say for example, demo.txt, in which so much content is there, which is written in English. I want to encrypt this entire content using exclusive operation, XOR operation. Then you may use whatever the number you want, and you may use cap symbol and file name. And thereby, what will happen whenever you execute on the command prompt, the content in the text file will be exclusively or encrypted with the number that you have chosen. So here, cap symbol and the tilt symbol, which is there on the which is there. Usually, we will use the tilt symbol for the destructors in the C++. That's tilt symbol. So this tilt symbol, cap symbol, and this kind of symbols especially are very dangerous. So you are supposed to check for whether these kind of symbols available in the input or not. If such kind of symbols are there, then you need to be alert and you alert the user that you should not use these characters. Next is use language specific libraries. So don't use generic libraries. You only use language specific libraries. Well, that means if you are using PHP for developing the web application, only use PHP specific libraries. Okay, don't take the generic libraries and implement it. And perform the input and output encoding. As we have seen previously, the encoding schemes, various encoding schemes like URL encoding, HTML encoding, Unicode encoding, and UTF-8 encoding, base64 uh, encoding. These kind of encoding schemes you are supposed to adopt. Next is use safe APIs because application programming interfaces are also having some vulnerabilities. So, so the reason you are recommended to use safe APIs and use parameterized SQL queries. So don't use direct SQL queries. You use always parameterized SQL queries. Uh, and one more thing is use modular shell dissociation. Means separate the separate the application with the shell of the operating system. Okay. So always whenever your application is sending command to the operating system or from database, if any command is going from the operating is going to the operating system, then the direct communication should not be possible. But give you design an architecture in such a way that for every communication to the operating system, there should be some what you call admin permissions are required. And instead of directly accessing, you must have an admin permission to access the uh, kernel of the operating system. So this is defending against the command injection. Next, we'll see the defending against the XSS attack. XSS is the cross-site scripting. Usually, the cross-site scripting, usually if the headers, cookies, or the form fields or some hidden fields are available in the form, or the query string, if the query string is also not proper, then this kind of cross-site scripting is possible. That is reason you are supposed to validate all these headers, cookies, the hidden fields, if any, form fields, etc. Basically, this can be done at the software testing level itself. But sometimes, because of the use of the automated tools at the software testing, sometimes these kind of defects may not be identified. So that can be revealed in the security testing. Next one is use the web application firewall. Usually, this web application firewall is especially used to block the execution of some malicious script. Okay, this kind of things can be stopped at the firewall level. So normal firewall is nothing but which is the firewall which is you are installing with the operating system. But the web application firewall is one that which is especially aimed for safeguarding the web application. Next one is encode metadata characters in the input. Next, use the testing tools. So as I told you just now, uh, these kind of things, especially the input validations and all, will be verified via the testing tools. So majorly, instead of going for the automated testing, you are also recommended to write some what you call manual testing scripts to test the web application. In this manual testing, you may supply with multiple wrong inputs and invalid inputs. So you can easily identify how the web application is reacting to those inputs. Next one is develop. Don't always trust the websites, even though you have HTTPS. So even though you are using HTTPS for the web application, don't always trust the websites that use HTTPS, especially when it comes to the cross-site scripting. Because in cross-site scripting, especially it is focusing on the cookie information. Even though you have HTTPS, if the cookie information and the related things were known, then it is not a big task for the hacker to inject the cross-site script in the web application. Next one is develop the standard signing scripts. That means which is verification in which the verification of private and public key pairs will be happened, and so this particular scripts will introduce the real authentication, just like by verifying public key and private key, and this kind of things. Next one is defending against the denial of service attacks. So in which the most common thing you people are aware of by this time, the denial of service attacks. So you may use the you may configure the firewalls. Configuring the firewalls. This firewall may be configured at the operating system level or web application level, especially to control the ICMP requests that are coming from the external which are external to the network. So configure the firewalls to deny the especially the external internet control message protocol, that is ICMP, and secure the remote administration and connectivity testing. The remote administration means the remote administration may be done via SSH or maybe any other remote services. So secure the remote administration. Always you use the secure tunnel for the SSH, and prevent the use of unnecessary functions, such as the functions that will allow you to launch the buffer overflow attacks, such as getters or strcpy or returning the address. This kind of functions try to avoid in development of the application, and prevent the sensitive information from the web application. That is, sensitive information means the especially like the password information or session token information, this kind of things. Uh, Especially prevent this kind of information from overwriting. Overwriting means do not allow any user to override this content. Next is obviously input validation need to be done. Next, Data processed by the attacker should be stopped. So attacker should not be in a position to inject any executable commands in the web application. So this can be identified by the firewall level itself or IDS level. So it is recommended to configure execution of the commands, blocking of the execution of the commands at the web application firewall or at the intrusion detection level itself. So these are some defending mechanisms that we can make to countermeasure the DOS attacks with respect to the web application. And many of the web applications will make use of the web services, which are the communication exchanges between the web applications. So we are supposed to safeguard uh, we are supposed to check for the uh, web services also, in which the first one is configure the web service description language access control permission. Configuring means in the sense who has to access these web services and what are the different roles that we can use or who are the roles that can access these web services. This access control mechanism need to be mentioned in the WSDL access control permissions. Next one is use document centric authentication credentials. Documentation centric is nothing but uh, that means document centric. In the sense, it is not documentation centric; it is document centric. Okay? Document centric in the sense, who are the users can access what type of documents. Because in XML, whatever the schema that you develop, like either it may be document object model or SAX, simple API for XML. Obviously, these documents can be accessed by certain users. So these credentials need to be mentioned, and in this process, you may also do this. Use multiple security credentials, like use of standard certificates for the XML web services, like X.509 certificate or WS web services security or any other security mechanism, powerful security mechanisms that can be adapted to the web services. Next one is deploy the web services that especially deploy the web services capable firewalls. Where in case of for web application firewalls are there. These web application firewalls, many of the web application firewalls may also will take care of these web services because they will be having an option of the web services also. So especially they will check through the HTML and HTTP and XML based input, and they will try to identify any uh, unnecessary things or unnecessary characters are available or any commands are available, and security certificates are properly valid, are properly maintained or not. These kind of things will be checked by the web services capable firewalls. The next one is configure the firewall or intrusion detection system for web services, especially for anomaly and signature detection. Anomaly in the sense is an abnormal behavior that will be identified in the schema or something, and signature detection. Signature in the sense there will be a standard signature will be available. Signature is nothing but there will be a strict format will be there. Whatever the communication will happen, that should happen in that strict format only. Any deviation from that format will raise an alarm by the intrusion detection system. So it is just like you are going to a bank and you are writing a check and you are signing there. And the banker will check, cross verify that your sign is matching with the sign already you have kept at the time of account opening. If there is a mismatch, then he will ask you to sign again at the backside of the check or in the TD. So this is what they call signing. Okay, the same signature based anomaly detection. So many of the intrusion detection systems will use the signature based anomaly detection. Especially they will check for the schema or the format that the communication format of the document communication happening in the web services. Next one is configure the firewalls or intrusion detection systems to filter the, especially to filter the services like SOAP services or XML syntaxes and related services. Next is always try to implement the centralized inline request and responses for the schema validation. Next is any external references are there in the XML schema or web services, try to block them. Next is, as usual, the maintain and update the security policies of the XML schemas that you have adopted. So these are the some countermeasures that we are supposed to take care of for the web services. And one more thing, finally, is it's not finally, it is one of the countermeasures, which is securing the CAPTCHA implementation. So in order to not to have repeated logins and to have the more stress on the login request on the server, usually the web applications will try to implement the CAPTCHA. So how to secure this CAPTCHA implementation? First one is the client should not have direct access to the CAPTCHA. Direct access means directly just by reading it or via reading the source code or via reading something. You should not be in a position to get it. And CAPTCHA should not be reused. The same CAPTCHA should not be repeated for some time. Okay, or the same CAPTCHA should not be used for multiple forms. So this kind of facility should not be there. Should be avoided in the web application development. Use a well-established CAPTCHA implementation. So the CAPTCHA implementation must be in such a way that it should be completely random. Okay, it should be completely random, and it should uh, that means CAPTCHA development and CAPTCHA formation algorithms are there. There are very famous algorithms available. So you are supposed to use CAPTCHA in such a way that it should generate a random fonts, it should generate random numbers, and it should generate a CAPTCHA in such a way that the same CAPTCHA should not be repeated at least for some days. Okay, so this kind of properties need to be adopted, and if such kind of properties are implemented in any algorithm, then such algorithms need to be recommended for using in your application. Next is include random letters in the CAPTCHA. Wrap individual letters. So if the individual letters are there, just to wrap on one another to by the name of display. Next is encrypt all communications. Use multiple fonts inside the CAPTCHA. Multiple fonts means one character may be with Times New Roman, another character may be with Courier New, or another character may be with Arial, like that. So use multiple fonts for inside the CAPTCHA when you are displaying. So these are the countermeasures that we can observe, and there are so many other countermeasures because these are the only limited countermeasures that I have mentioned here. There may be there are some other countermeasures, especially related to the uh, that is redirections, that is URL redirections. So don't. First one is some other applications like invalid redirections. That means sometimes whenever you click any URL, it may be redirected to some other websites or some other things. So avoid using the redirections as maximum as possible. When you are redirecting also, the redirecting input or redirecting URL should be sanitized, and redirecting URL should be validated first. And always you use SSL, secure socket layer, for authenticating the authentication process and maintaining the session. And always you use the credentials or transmitting of the credentials in the hashed form, and always you use the post request. If you can do these three things, that is usage of SSL and maintaining the user inputs in the hashed form and use of the post, then you can avoid the broken authentication and session management. That means it is a countermeasure. okay, for the broken authentication and session management. And there is another thing that we need to take care of, that is CSRF, so that is cross-site request forgery. So in order to do this, some countermeasures are like this. Whenever whenever the web application is not used for some time, then immediately log off. Okay, automatic log off should be there. Whenever the log off was done, then whatever the search history or the cache, sorry, the cookies that was taken into consideration must be cleared off. Okay, and whenever the browser is closed, then the sensitive information must be cleared off, must be deleted. And next one is check for the HTTP reference headers. Um, check for the HTTP reference headers, and when processing this post request, uh, th- so these kind of things, especially clearing the history, clearing the login details, clearing the cookies, browser cookies, etc., and also checking for the HTML, HTTP referer headers. We'll try to address the avoiding of the cross-site request forgery. And one more thing is you must use strong security algorithms. Don't use outdated algorithms like MD4 or any other thing. Even MD5 can also be easily cracked if you have the sufficient dictionary. So don't use the weak cryptographic algorithms. Generate the encryption keys, uh, strong encryption keys, and you should ensure that the encrypted data should not be simply decrypted, and always use the disk encryption to store the encrypted data. And you should always ensure that it is not easy to decrypt that encrypted data on the disk or the data which is transmitted over the communication, web application communication. So these are the things you are supposed to take care of. And there are so many other things are available, like the transport layer protection need to be observed, and check for the directed traversals, and don't allow the cookie poisoning or session poisoning. So perfectly implement the logout function, and whenever the protected directories are there, you must be you must check your business logic that the directory traversal cannot enter into the protected areas, and the transport layer security. Always you use the latest like SSL certificates, SSL protection, because old SSL versions are having some vulnerabilities. So always you use the latest version, always updated version of SSL to be used. And there are some other things like security misconfiguration need to be checked, and that means disable all the default accounts, stop all the unnecessary services, and always check for the security patches if they are available, then update them. Thereby, security misconfigurations can be overcome. Next is uh, go for the domain value validation. That is the domain name validation and directory validations need to be done. And if whenever you do these validations, then LDAP, that is lightweight directory access protocol, related injection attacks can be avoided. And one more thing is you should also take care of the file injection. Not only LDAP injection, command injection, SQL injection, but sometimes file may also be injected, because you can save some files in the, or you can save anything, or whenever you upload content in the form, then the form content may be saved in PDFs or maybe in the form of image. In such cases, you are supposed to check for the file injection related things. So for that, you need to you need to check for the file extensions, whether the file extension is of type .conf, that is configuration, or .xml or .ini, this kind of things. Especially .ini files are very dangerous. You should not allow the .ini files, because in the Apache server, or especially like PHP related web servers, that is the web servers that will run PHP. There will be config.ini will be there, php.ini will be there, admin.ini. This kind of files will be available. Usually, you should stop avoiding overwriting of these files, or otherwise, what will happen means the PHP configuration settings will be changed. So, like this, you are supposed to safeguard at every level. That is especially a few things like one is the validation of the input need to be taken care. Use strong security mechanisms always, and don't allow the malicious or don't allow the all files to be uploaded or all files to be converted. That means you should specify only few files to be uploaded, like .doc files or .pdf files. So thereby you can avoid .ini, .conf, .xml, this kind of things to be uploaded into the server. And always you use proper firewall settings at the operating system level. Proper firewall settings to the web application, like by adopting the web application firewall, and also by choosing carefully security mechanism for the web services. So by using all these things, you may try to uh, provide a secure environment for the web applications. So these are the limited countermeasures. I have not gone in deep of each and every countermeasure. I have given an overview of the various countermeasures that are provided, that are available with the that are supposed to safeguard the web applications.